I have a question. Are you a guy who, or are you in love with a guy who struggles with how to be an emotionally healthy partner in his intimate relationship? Because if so, I have a classic story that I want to share with you, one that I've heard many times over the course of my 30-plus year career of being a marriage and family therapist, as well as a relationship coach for men. It's about a client I will call Dude. That's not his name, but his story raises a common issue that the guys that I work with, sooner or later, they all deal with this. By the way, I might be talking to you about this guy that I'm calling Dude, but I'm also talking to all of you dudes out there, all right? His first question to me when we started therapy was, why is it that my wife always wants me to talk to her about my feelings? How does me becoming more emotional make me more attractive to her? I answered him. I said, Dude, attraction and sex appeal comes from being real. Being real means having the guts to be emotionally honest and vulnerable with the person that you love. When I told him that, I think his head exploded. But then I asked him a question. I said, what is it that you are looking to get out of therapy? He said, well, for a while now, my wife has been complaining about the fact that she feels alone and neglected in our marriage because I don't talk to her about any of my feelings other than my anger. I said, okay, and as we started to get to know each other, he opened up and he painted a picture for me that his father consistently ridiculed him whenever he would cry or display any kind of an emotion. Crying and showing emotion is for sissy boys, is something his father apparently said to him more often than not. Also, Dude said that in his young adulthood, he was previously married and divorced. And he said, by the way, my first wife had the same complaint about me that my current wife has, which is she never felt emotionally connected with me. Big surprise, huh? He also told me that his worst fear about being in therapy was, well, if I learn how to talk about my feelings, I might have to give up some piece of my masculinity, and if that happens, my wife is gone for sure. Dude's story is very familiar. So many of us men grew up as boys believing the lie that emotional vulnerability was a weakness. And if we saw our emotional expression as being some kind of weakness in our character, no way would we not fear others judging us the same way and looking at us thinking that we are weak and unmanly. So where does this fear come from? Well, I think I know where it comes from. Dude's dad taught Dude the exact same thing that my dad taught me, which was that survival of the fittest is really about survival of the least vulnerable. And what that means is the vulnerability that we feel as humans, whether it's physical vulnerability or emotional vulnerability, we experience as a threat. And when our system feels that threat, it automatically triggers our fight or flight survival instinct in order to shut those feelings of vulnerability down. So, an example of this is, like physical vulnerability for Dude was if some guy came up to him and threw a punch at him, that would automatically trigger his fight or flight instinct, and he would either punch back, which is his fight mode, or he would take off and run for the hills, which is his flight mode. Got it? And so with emotional vulnerability for Dude, with his wife, if she would get angry at him and start to argue or criticize him, or if she even just asked him how he was feeling, any of that triggered his fight or flight And he would then either get angry and start to argue with her, which is his fight mode, or he would shut down, avoid talking to his wife, avoid talking about any of those emotions. That's his flight mode. So dude realized he needed to break this cycle by trying somehow, some way to access the courage and the self-respect that is crucial for taking the risk to feel vulnerable in order to share what's in his heart with the person that he loves, because that is what being real is about in the first place, isn't it? So, how could I help this guy access these vulnerable emotions without triggering his fight or flight instinct, which would shut him down? And so, I decided to start by helping him rewire his anger, because anger was the only emotion really that he would let himself feel. And I had him imagine his anger as being like a mask that he would use to cover up the more vulnerable feelings that were in his heart, like his pain, his fear, his sadness, his shame. And with that in place, I then gave him 2 things to do differently with whatever anger he was feeling. 2 things. And I call them thing 1 and thing 2. Thing 1 was for him to recognize the emotions that might be underneath his anger when he gets triggered. And so I told him, the next time you get angry with your wife, pause, take a deep breath, and ask yourself the question, hey, am I using my anger right now to cover up other stuff that's going on inside me? Like, am I hurt? Am I scared? Am I embarrassed? Because if so, you've got to respectfully tell your wife, hey, babe, yeah, the truth is I'm angry right now, but I can also see that underneath that, I'm hurt by that conversation we had earlier, or it really confused me or embarrassed me. So can we talk about that stuff, please? Because that seems to be really important. That's thing 1. Thing 2 would be for him to become more curious about what emotions were underneath his wife's anger. And so I told him, the next time your wife gets angry with you, listen, and when it's your turn to speak, respectfully ask her the question, hey, babe, I get that you're angry with me right now. Got it. But what I'm wondering is, if what I said to you earlier or did something to you earlier, did I hurt your feelings? Or did I scare you? Or did I embarrass you? Because if so, can we please talk about that stuff? Because that's really important. Please tell me. And then just listen to her. That's thing 2. So thing 1 and thing 2 are 2 small shifts that can deepen empathy, trust, and emotional intimacy in any relationship. So the sex appeal of being real, it's about how any of you dudes out there can celebrate being the real guy that you are by tuning in to your truth that lives in your heart, not what's in your head, but what's in your heart, and sharing that with the person that you love. Because when you do that, you will not only be an emotionally healthy partner, you will become an emotionally healthy dude. This is the manly makeover I'm talking about, everybody. It's a shift that makes life richer, love deeper, by living a life of authenticity, vulnerability, and self-respect. If we can all move toward that, then the world of men and the people who love them will be all the better for it. Thank you.